Hey everyone, how are you doing? I hope that you're doing well. So I had a really great morning this morning in my meditation practice that I do. And as I was in my space, and even though it was part of a meditation practice, I also incorporate other modalities into it, so it's kind of become my own. And through that and everything that I've been working on, it's for one been a really great blessing, but it kind of helps me to tune into my higher self and connect and receive all the knowledge and wisdom that I get to share with others. So I am very blessed. So I wanted to kind of talk about what I got from this morning's practice was an aspect of the consciousness, which really makes sense to me, and brings things more into alignment and understanding. And so a lot of people look at consciousness in different ways, and so this might be a different way to look at it. It also draws me to my experience of experiencing source energy, because I experience source energy as consciousness and nothing more, and not a God figure, not a man with a long hair, blah blah blah, what we have to believe that we have to put an image to. There is no image of source, what I call source energy, where everything becomes from, right, the non-physical into the physical. Our consciousness, and so source to me is consciousness. And so when I was in meditation, it kind of put things more in better perspective and understanding. So consciousness is, of course, at different levels. Everybody is at different levels, and you can see how everything comes back to consciousness. Everything is linked to consciousness. Without consciousness, there is nothing. So and I think a lot of I understand where some philosophies or thought processes believe that source and everything is mind. Everything is mind, right? And I believe that was spoken in the Kabbalion. So that's been my experience without knowing of the Kabbalion and all that. It's just been my true experience that source is consciousness. It's an energy. It's a vibration. It's never ending. It's hard to explain. You have to feel it, right? You have to experience it to really know what I'm talking about. So as I was saying, everything comes back through consciousness, right? Because without consciousness, there is nothing. And consciousness, at the level that we are, and here's just some examples that I'm going to throw out there. So the consciousness that we are at creates our thoughts, our beliefs, our acts, our behaviors. Everything comes from the state of consciousness, right? And we're all at different levels. So where we are in our level of consciousness is what's going to be created. It's going to be what's shows up in our physical, what we experience, what we put out there, different things like that. So it's just the level of consciousness that we're at and that we're experiencing. So this is a good way to kind of know where everybody's on their journey, and it has nothing to do with whether it's right or wrong, bad or good, because consciousness is just consciousness. There's nothing else, right? Consciousness doesn't deem itself bad or good. It just is. It's us who deems things good or bad. So when people are at a certain level of consciousness and they're not really in alignment with true consciousness, right? Whatever that may be to another person's belief, right? Somebody may be doing something that they deem as inappropriate, not up to standards, creating crimes, doing different things, but that's just their consciousness, where they're at, right? And so we shouldn't see any fault to that, because everybody, including me, you, everybody else in human form, has been at a lower consciousness at some point. And so when we rise up, we can see the differences in the consciousnesses that are out there, right? As part of the awakening. But instead of deeming others as, good or bad, wrong or right, my way's right, your way's wrong, we have to help lift them up too, because our consciousness is a whole, and we are only individual pieces, tiny little pieces. That's a minuscule part of the whole consciousness. There's much more out there than what we actually get to experience as a consciousness. And as we're experiencing the little bit that we get to experience, we're actually being like the observer of our lives as that aspect of the consciousness, the experience, which is actually was shown to me in like a slow motion mode, when actually everything is actually, consciousness is very quick. And so we are experiencing it at a very slow rate, because we are at a level of low vibration, and that's how we become physical in form. And so now that we're in physical form, we get to experience life. That's how we get to experience life, is becoming physical and being born into this realm, this state of being, this perception, this reality, right? So I hope that makes sense, because I don't want to go too off where people aren't getting or knowing what I'm speaking about. So when it was shown to me about how everything just is slowed down, it's like a movie, right? That's like going in fast speed. Like if you're fast forwarding, that's like consciousness. And then our experience of life is very slow. It's like when you're playing the movie at regular speed, right? Or you're slowing it down more. And so there's varying degrees of speed, right? That's within our consciousness. And so because we are in that dense form of physical reality, we get to experience that and see and experience the life that's being created. And Esther Hicks and Jerry talk about that being on the leading edge, right? So that's where we are. We get to experience it. And so it's interesting to kind of see all this coming together, and I'm trying to like put it in words so it's easy to understand from what they were showing me. So when we are experiencing our lives, how we look at it, of course goes through consciousness. We get the opportunity to look at it as positive or negative, wrong or right, not only about others, but about ourselves, right? And so that's where judgment comes from. And when we put people in judgment in the box, and I've talked about these things before in different videos, judgment, which is helping to draw this all together into it. Judgment kind of holds people in that state of vibration, right? The vibration that we actually are trying not to be in, that we want to raise up to, so that everybody can be on the same path. in the same space, raising consciousness. So we can all evolve, right? Because we all want to evolve. Some people are just finding it harder than others because of their experiences and what they're seeing, what they're understanding, and they're not able to really understand what's going on. Just like when I had my life, like I didn't understand all this as I understand it now until my awakening, and so this is where all this gets to come from. But when we get to a place that we are judging others, like I was saying, we tend to hold them in that vibration, and actually that's just our perception, right? It's what we experience of that person. So here's an example. If they were to go away for months or a year or whatever, and they change and they have awakening and they come back, you're still going to automatically have that view of them as they were that you knew of them, right? So that's not present current time, right? So there's time, space, and reality, and this all comes into play too. So when we see them in that, right, it can snap them back into their old ways of being. So we have to really be careful about how we're responding to others and keeping them up, right, as well as of ourselves. We have to be uplifters of not only ourselves but others, right, around us, so that we can all rise. Because if one is in a high vibration of consciousness and deems another one lower, right, it pulls everybody back down, right? And you may not realize it, but it can pull you down. It keeps them down. So we always have to see each other and everybody in a higher state of consciousness, right? Because everything is of consciousness. There's nothing else but consciousness. And it just happens to be where other people are at that current moment in their lives, right? And they just haven't shifted to a higher level of consciousness yet. And for whatever reason, they're still learning, or they're still trying, or they're trying to work it out, or trying to figure things out, or something's happening that's within their vortex, or whatever it is that's not helping them shift very quickly. Because like I said, we're in slow motion, right? And when we're in the slow motion, we're the observer of our lives and our experience on the leading edge. And so with that being said, in that time-space reality, we also have where we're multidimensional and we're on a linear level in certain dimensions, right? And until we go, when we step out of the linear level and view and perception of things, then we can connect with divine source, right? And that's a different level of consciousness. So linear thinking is across the board, and we get stuck in that because a lot of times we get caught up in the past, right? And this is all on the timeline of linear. It's past, present, and future, and that's where that comes from, right? But we're always in the present moment time, right? But mind, okay, here's mind again, consciousness at that level shifts through past, present, and future a lot, right? And you can see that by a person who's experiencing trauma, something that they've experienced, that they came here to create an experience and learn from, and they get stuck in that trauma. And even though they're in the present moment living, and they're not living in that traumatic experience anymore, they're currently in the present moment. We are always in the present moment. It's just being aware of we're in the present moment and staying out of the past, staying out of the future, because those things bring up problems, right? When we're stuck in a traumatic experience and we're not letting it go, and we're not seeing it as the observer and just as an experience, right? That even though we experienced it, it's just an experience. It's not who we are. It's attachment to that experience of trauma that keeps us stuck there. And so when we're in that space, it's hard to be in the present moment. Sorry, that's my car beeper. I'm sitting in the parking lot for the foodie store. I'm going to go in a few minutes after I finish this. But we're stuck in the past, even though we're in the present moment. So we're experiencing multi-dimensions at one time. They're all dimensions, past, present, and future. When we go in the future, we start worrying and being concerned and things like that. We get caught up in stress and anxiety and worrying about stuff like that. So it's important to stay in the present moments as we're going through our shifting consciousness. And when we can do that, we can become more of the observer than the experiencer and get caught up and tied up in the situations that we're experiencing, right? The attachment to it. Because sometimes things can be very traumatic, right? So like, and that's what brought my consciousness. So not, even though things are traumatic in their experience, you know, we in reality have chosen to experience what we chose, right? And that's just our consciousness, the level of consciousness that we're at. And everything preceding that time, moment, space in reality has led up to the very moment that we're currently in. So everything is in alignment with what it's supposed to be to get us to where it is that we are. And it may be hard to understand that because people, you know, and that's just the aspect of the mind. Again, passing through the mind, we get caught up in, you know, this person did this to me, this person, and we're playing the role of the sufferer, right? So we have all these other dimensions and realities that we come into alignment with too as we're going through our experience, our life experiences. And so it all just passes through the mind. There's nothing that doesn't come through the mind, which is consciousness, right? And I don't want to say mind because mind is not the brain. The brain is just a functioning organ. The mind is the consciousness. So be careful in how you view that too, because some people think that their mind is in the brain, but it's not. It's not. It's in our heart, right? It's just also an organ. That's not where our love and emotions come from. We think it's coming from the heart, but it's only because that's where a lot of us, we sense our emotions and our feelings from, right? So all of our emotions and feelings come from that, but our heart is just an organ that pumps the blood through our body. Then that's the only role that it has. It's the only intelligence that it has. And again, there's another intelligence form, right? So our body is an intelligence, our mind is an intelligence, our brain is intelligence. Everything is an intelligence, and everything passes through intelligence, which is source, in order to become, for it to operate, to process, to do what it is that's necessary to be done, right? So everything is intelligence. Everything is source. We're source on a physical level, we're source on a non-physical level, we're source throughout our whole body, throughout our whole being, throughout everything in the universe, because we have evolved from other states of being, right? Being reborn unto this and then unto that, as we have gone through, right? So we evolve over and over and over again. And as more species and things show up that we don't know of, and they're always finding new forms of species and things like that. And these are things that are just resurfacing, right? These are new creations, new dimensions, new realities. All these are different consciousnesses that are being created around us. And just because we see something new that's being created within the world, we think it's something that's not right. It doesn't fit here, it doesn't belong here, it doesn't fit in my box, and that's wrong. Right? Because we don't know what creator, source, energy, the consciousness is working on creating next. You know what I mean? We are evolving. We're always revolving. Every second of the moment of the day, it's a new moments every second of the day. We are constantly evolving. So there's nothing that is wrong or right, right? It's not my way, it's not your way, it's not any way, right? It is only through the choices that we make for ourselves, right? So we shouldn't be deeming others, you know, their consciousness at a level that does not fit in a box, because everybody's going to be at a different place at a different time and experience different things on different levels. And so it is up to them to become aware and to awakening and experience what is it that they need to experience. But coming back around to where I was talking about, I was in my meditation, I was seeing myself as the minuscule piece of who I am in this little dimension. We're just a little piece in this physical reality. And when we step outside of the physical reality, like when we transition, we become again, one with the whole, right? So when we're in the physical dimension and it slows down and we have the life and we experience the life and then we transition and then we're back to the whole. We don't die forever. We continue, right? We go into a different consciousness, a different form, a different reality. And it's all based on what we do in this lifetime. So each lifetime is very important. So know that it's important to work on yourself, right? Practice things, learn things, and I'm not saying going to college, learn things. I'm talking about learn about you, who you are, the truth about who you are, the aspects of you. Know your consciousness, know your body is a consciousness. So self-care, taking care of yourself, working on gratefulness, forgiveness, making amends, work on relationships, do all these things, because you're only going to create a space where you're raising your own consciousness in a conscious way as before when you were unconscious, right? And you will see a big difference between creating life in a conscious way than you did unconsciously, because you will have different relationships and different experiences at that point. And you can just take a look around, and you can see what I'm saying. This is all true, right? If we really look at the truth, right? Beyond what states that we've believed ourselves to be. Because we have a lot of thought processes out there, a lot of religions, beliefs, things like that. So set those aside for a little bit and see the truth within it, the reality in it, right? Not taking on just whatever it is because somebody's teaching it and passing it down. So it's just looking at it from a different perspective, if that makes sense. So the consciousness is different levels, right? And experiencing consciousness from the observer point of view, which I was seeing that also this morning in my meditation state. Being the observer and seeing everything, watching myself sit there and meditate, which was pretty awesome. That's happened a couple times before, but that's awesome to be able to experience that, where I'm actually stepping outside of myself, watching myself sit there and meditate. So, and these things they take practice, and it just takes desire and will, right? Because anything we can do if we choose to do it, it's when we don't choose to do something that we don't do it. So I hope some of this made sense. If not, and I hope it wasn't a bunch of rattling, because I was trying to bring it all together, and there was so much to it and so much more that I was experiencing. So I just want to kind of hit on a couple topics within that realm. But know that everything is consciousness. Everything goes through consciousness. Nothing doesn't pass through consciousness. And if we can just see other people as they are, right? And know that they are rising and they're here just as well to rise their consciousness as we are, right? That can help us raise everybody at one time through the states of consciousness, right? Because it just gets bigger and bigger and better and better. There's so many dimensions and realities out there. It's way, way more than what we could even imagine. So, and and I just want to put this out there for those who are all about aliens and stuff like that. No, I'm not really talking about aliens, dimensions, those kinds of things. I'm just talking about our states of being, our states of consciousness. So kind of take a look at that, and hopefully this makes sense. If you have any questions or want more clarification, please contact me. You can reach me on the website, email, you can call me. My phone number is listed out there. I got a website, oracle/wisdom.com. Check everything out and let me know. You can post some questions below or contact me. Thank you. Happy journeys.